let's dive in. Today, we're breaking down one of the most intense industrial safety systems out there, the Saudi Aramco work permit system. Think of this as your personal study guide. By the time we're done, you'll get how it works, why every single step is so critical, and the life-saving logic behind it all. You know, this quote right here, it gets right to the heart of it. A work permit isn't just a piece of paper that says, go ahead. Not at all. It's the result of a whole safety investigation. It's a complete game plan that lays out every possible danger and the exact steps to take to make sure everyone stays safe. So it's less like a ticket and more like a carefully drawn blueprint for survival. So here's our game plan for this study guide. We're going to start with the why, the whole point of the system. Then we'll meet the key people who make it all happen. After that, we'll walk through the entire life of a permit, from start to finish. We'll break down the 4 different types of permits and wrap it all up with a glossary of terms you absolutely have to know. Okay, first things first, why are these permits so important? Before we get into all the forms and the nitty-gritty procedures, you've got to understand the core idea that makes this entire system tick. At its most basic level, the work permit system is a formal, organized way to keep things from going wrong. It's an authorization process, right? It's designed to control any kind of job, construction, maintenance, you name it, that could possibly hurt people, break expensive equipment, mess up operations, or damage the environment. Bottom line, if a task has risk, it needs a permit. So when do you actually need one of these? Well, there are 2 main triggers. First, if you're working in a restricted area, that's pretty much anywhere that handles hydrocarbons, flammable stuff, or toxic materials. Second, if you're doing their restricted activity, which is basically any task that comes with its own set of potential dangers. Now, there are a few exceptions for really low-risk jobs, but that's it. All right, we know why the system is here. Now let's talk about who makes it all work. Because a system, it's only as strong as the people running it, and this one is built on a very clear division of who does what. This slide really shows you the critical partnership that makes the whole thing function. You've got 2 main people, the issuer and the receiver. The issuer is the authority figure. They're the one who assesses the job, identifies all the hazards, lays out the safety precautions, and then issues the permit. The receiver is the one who carries it out. They accept the permit, they make sure their crew follows every single rule to the letter, and they have to stay on site to supervise. One plans, the other performs. Both are absolutely essential. So we've covered the why and the who. Now let's get into the how. In this part, we're going to follow a permit through its entire life, from the moment it's requested all the way to when the job is done and the permit is closed out. This is the heart of the process right here. It's a 6-step workflow, and you should think of each step as a critical safety checkpoint. You start by picking the right type of permit and defining the work. That leads to a hands-on site inspection and, of course, gas testing. A permit only gets authorized if everything checks out. And then, finally, the work gets done under constant supervision. I really want to zoom in on step 3 for a second, because it might just be the most important step of all. The joint site inspection. This is a mandatory stop point. This is not a box-ticking exercise. It's a real hands-on hazard hunt where the issuer and the receiver physically walk the job site together. They challenge each other. They make sure the plan on the paper matches the reality on the ground. And this has to happen before anyone even thinks about starting the work. And here's the hard science that backs up the whole system. These numbers, they aren't suggestions. They are absolute, non-negotiable rules. If a gas test shows any reading for combustible gas, anything above 0% LEL, then all hot work is off the table. Period. If you got hydrogen sulfide or over 10 parts per million, you're wearing a breathing apparatus. No exceptions. And if oxygen levels are too low or too high, nobody enters. These numbers are the final word. Okay, on to our 4th section. Look, you wouldn't use a screwdriver to hammer a nail, right? And in this system, you don't use the same permit for every single job. There are 4 different types, and each one is designed for a specific kind of hazard. It's all about matching the right safety tool with the right task. First up, we have the cold work permit. This is for any job that isn't going to create an ignition source. We're talking about things like building scaffolding, painting with a regular brush, or using basic hand tools. But here's the most important thing to remember. Cold does not mean no risk. It just means no sparks. And on the flip side of cold work is, of course, the hot work permit. You need this for any activity that could create sparks, flames, or serious heat. Things like welding, sandblasting, or even just running a gas-powered engine. And with a hot work permit, extra precautions are mandatory, like covering any nearby sewers and having a dedicated fire watch on standby. The third permit is for equipment opening or line breaks. These are incredibly high-risk jobs, where you're basically opening up a pressurized system that could be full of dangerous stuff. The potential for disaster is huge, which is why the system includes this simple but brilliant technique. You always crack open a flange at the 5 o'clock position. That one simple rule makes sure that if anything does spray out unexpectedly, it's directed down and away from the worker. It's a lifesaver. And last but not least, we have the most serious permit of them all, confined space entry. This is for going into any area that wasn't built for people, especially places that are tough to get in and out of. The safety rules here are absolutely strict. You need a dedicated supervisor, you need a standby person right at the entrance, you need a log to track who goes in and out, and you need a detailed plan. There is absolutely no room for error with this one. We've gone through the why, the who, the how, and the what. So to wrap up our study guide, let's make sure all this knowledge sticks with a quick-fire glossary of the most important terms. Think of this as your final vocabulary review. First up, LEL. That stands for Lower Explosive Limit. It's the absolute minimum amount of a vapor mixed with air that can catch fire or explode. When you're doing hot work, the goal on site is always 0% LEL. You just can't risk creating a spark when there's any fuel in the air. Next, the joint site inspection. We've talked about this one a lot, and for good reason. It is that mandatory walkthrough where the issuer and the receiver get eyes on the job site together. It's that crucial moment where the plan on the page gets checked against the reality on the ground, and it always happens before a permit gets signed. Okay, here's a big technical term. Blinding. This is way more secure than just turning off a valve. This is what we call positive isolation. You're physically inserting a solid metal plate into a pipe to create a solid wall that nothing can get through. This is an absolute requirement for isolating pipes that lead into a confined space before anyone enters. And finally, the fire watch. This person has one single, incredibly important job: watch for fire. They keep an eye on the area during any hot work, and this is the critical part, they have to stay there for at least 30 minutes after the work is done. Why? Because a stray spark can smolder for a long time before it finally ignites. So there you have it. We've covered the purpose, the people, the process, and the precautions of this entire system. To close out this study guide, I'm going to leave you with a question to think about. Now that you see this whole safety chain, where do you think the single most critical point of failure is? Where could one small mistake, one moment of rushing, lead to a total disaster? It's something really important to consider. Thanks for joining me.